All right, everybody, welcome to LandO's Logic, a video series that used to exist on my YouTube channel, and we are bringing it back in line of all the amazing announcements that have been coming out over the last few days. I mean, we got, 4v4, we got PC now with controller and CDL, and now we have the Huntsmen going out there and signing Dashy, which for those that have been keeping up with the roster change rumors is not all that unexpected. It is not surprising to see that it has come here on September 14th. The reason why I bring up the date specifically is because of the idea that September 13th was the official roster change window, meaning that after that date, it is basically on that day specifically, you are allowed to sign players. So in order for contracts to be official, in order for those conversations to develop, it is not surprising that we do see a move, and it is not surprising that we see the Chicago Huntsmen go with a player like Dashy. Obviously, for those that have seen the announcements, it has been somewhat clear that there is movement going on in the Huntsman camp. There is movement going on in the Optic Gaming camp as well, as Optic announced that they had released Dashy. In turn, Huntsman have kind of previously released that the Twins are free agents as well, which meant that there was one spot left open, and it was left open for a guy that has wanted to be on this Chicago Huntsman team since the start of not just this season, but last season. It has been a rumor for a very long time that Dashy wanted to be on the Chicago Huntsmen coming into Modern Warfare. And again, Kenny had actually confirmed, for those that have watched the video that Kenny had released, it was a great video, kind of his perspective on the season with Optic and his kind of, ability to play with someone like Dashy, and he gave a lot of really good, kind of in-depth details on things. But kind of in that video, he basically started off by saying Dashy wanted to be on the Huntsmen, right? Dashy wanted to be on that team. And that, for me, was the issue with this Optic Gaming Los Angeles team since the start of the season, was that you pretty much start off on the wrong foot, because one of your star players, if not the biggest star player on this team, didn't really want to be there, right? He didn't want to be on this roster. And so I'm not sure if that was a Huntsman issue in terms of not getting the deal done. I'm not sure if that was an Optic Gaming situation in which they wouldn't let him go over to the Huntsman. Regardless, right, whenever you are this Optic Gaming team in which you're looked upon as one of the scariest teams coming into Modern Warfare, I don't care what anybody says, right, in terms of, that team was never really expected to be good. No, they were expected not to be good. They were expected to be great. And the fact that they couldn't live up to those expectations was incredibly unfortunate. And a lot of it had to do with the disconnect between Dashy and the team, aka Dashy and Slasher. Now, Kenny, like I said, went on to give some really good details in terms of his side of the story on how Kenny basically had went to him and said, hey, I want you to be the star, which was staggering to me. He said, I wanted you to be the star, and we want to know how to play around you. And he said, hey, I want to play main AR. They give Dashy the main AR. And it was funny hearing his perspective, because this was something as a community we were looking at from an outward perspective and saying, hey, what's going on in there, right? What's going on in those comms? What's going on in the Optic camp in terms of what exactly that they were up to? And it was clear that there was a disconnect between himself and Slasher, and that was indicated in the results, that was indicated in the kind of forward progressing throughout the season, in which at times Optic would look great, then they would fall flat. I mean, literally fall so flat that they look like the worst team in the world. They lost full very easily. There was a lot of strife, there was a lot of emotion being felt on this roster, and it was hard to see exactly how they were going to perform as the rest of the season began to progress. And so again, toward the end of the year, you see guys like Draws and Hollow be brought in. Before that, you saw Chino be brought into the team as well. Lots of substitution usage, and Dashy does not play at COD Champs, which is still unbelievable to me. Not in terms of the decision that Optic made, but in terms of saying that Dashy, the player that he is, was not going to compete at COD Champs. So again, the Dashy with OGLA thing, it doesn't work. It is not a surprise that we see him basically go on a leave from that roster, and it is not a surprise that we see the Huntsmen give him the call. Again, it has been a rumor for a while. I believe it was the Huntsmen that released a video kind of a few hours ago with the kind of call out to Batman, right? Kind of shining the light in the sky, giving a nod to Bruce, aka Dashy. So kind of from that point on, it was no surprise that this was going to be a move that was happening. Again, this was something for me that I expected to see happen very soon, and I'm excited about it. Right? We'll go and talk about the Chicago Huntsmen lineup quickly here. This group of 4, I think, is going to be an interesting one. And even quickly touching on the old Chicago Huntsmen lineup, which was also a very hyped up team coming into the year, they have their fair share of moves as well. Bring in Prestini for Gunless toward the stretch of the season. I feel like both organizations, right, in terms of the Huntsmen and Optic, dealt with a similar problem in terms of getting everyone to buy into a certain system, right? I think Dashy didn't really buy into the slasher system. Gunless had a hard time kind of buying into the vibe of the Huntsman team. So I think whenever you look at this group of 4, I'm interested by it because I think this is a group of 4 that wants to be together. I think this is a group of 4 from all accounts that wants to be together and that has a similar vibe, a similar personality type to one another. And one thing that is interesting about this group, kind of looking forward, because the talent is undeniable, right? I mean, the talent is by no means undeniable. They lose a big key piece for me in Arcees, which I would have loved to see them keep, but obviously they do not, as he's rumored to be going to the Atlanta phase. But I think that when you look at this group of 4 on paper, I really like the divide that you have. And I know the word divide kind of sounds odd, but you kind of have, I don't want to say the old, right? But you have T2P, right? A group that has been together for a duo that has been together since the beginning, if you want to kind of call it that. A duo that has been through everything together. They won a world championship together. And you also have them in different classes, right? Scump, known as an SMG throughout his entire career, one of the greatest of all time in that position. Formal and AR his entire career, regarded as one of the best in terms of that position of all time. And on the other side, right, you have a young guy in Envoy who was the star player for the Huntsmen last season, has kind of been looked upon as the predecessor for someone like Scump, possibly, as he's rumored that retirement could be on the horizon within the next few seasons. Envoy is kind of that player, and Dashy is kind of like that for Formal as well. I know Dashy plays a flex, but I think it's fair to say his natural role is an AR in his hands. And so I think, like I said, you have this kind of interesting divide of these two groups, of which you have the veterans and you kind of have the young guys on the other end. And I think that both have the ability to really mesh well off one another. In terms of the Dallas Empire roster at the end of last season, team that wins the world championship, they had such a great mix of young talent conversing with veteran talent and guys like Clayster and Crimsix and obviously Shotzi, Illy, and Hook. So I think that you could have a similar situation to that. I don't know if it works the same way necessarily, but I think in terms of what you're looking at from an on-paper perspective, I like the persona. I like the way that this team kind of will function with one another. I think there is the ability at times to maybe have a few internal problems, but again, I think this team has a laid-back mentality. This is a roster that Dashy wants to be on. He's back playing his dedicated role because Formal's not losing the main AR. So I think that everything is going to click a lot better than the old Huntsman or the old Optic team did in terms of the Optic team from Modern Warfare and the Huntsman team obviously here from Modern Warfare as well. And one last thing that I want to hit on. There are two players. I wouldn't say two players. There's probably like 3 or 4 players throughout my entirety of watching Call of Duty esports, which goes back to like 2010, so basically a decade now. There are like 3 to 4 players throughout my entire history when I have looked at their gameplay and said, there is nobody like them, right? I've said, there is nobody who can match that type of talent. And the most recent 2 occasions where I've said that were Octane and now Dashy, right? Their aiming ability is inhuman. I mean, literally, it is far and away way better than the average COD pro. And I think that when you talk about talent, people have forgotten already about Dashy because obviously he does not have a great year on Optic by any means. Doesn't play at champs, has a ton of low KDs. I mean, literally, the list kind of goes on, obviously. But people have forgot how talented of a player that he is. And I think if, like I said, given the right situation, given the right circumstance, he has the ability to now be that player for the team, right? To be the star player on the biggest team in the CDL, right? The biggest fan base, one of the biggest names, Chicago Huntsmen. Everybody knows it, right? He has the ability to be that player again, and I think he is going to rise to the occasion. I think he's going to rise to the occasion. I think he's going to be looked upon as one of the best players in the world again because he has the ability to get there. And I think now with 4v4, I think that helps him. I think that helps the team. Envoy is an unselfish player, right? He's a great communicator. You have someone like Scump as well. I think just in general, the way that this team works, it is going to be a great place for him to land. It's content focused. It's this idea of kind of a family atmosphere. I think he is going to mesh well in this group, and I think we are going to see him return back to form that a lot of people expected him to, because he was without question the best player to start off Black Ops 4, and he kind of started to trickle out a little bit because this guy named Simp decided to enter the scene. And I've always said Dashy was supposed to be Simp. Right? He was supposed to be that guy, and Simp pretty much came in and stole the show, right? Obviously with E United, comes in now here on the Atlanta FaZe, has a great season, an MVP candidate. A lot of people argue that he should have won MVP, but just in general, a player like Dashy should be rivaling, right? Those two should be kind of, in my eyes, leading the charge in terms of the CDL, but he hasn't been there. And I think that he will be now with this Huntsmen lineup. Again, an unbelievably talented roster, one that I'm very excited to see. I think this is a group that Dashy's going to feel confident and comfortable with, and that is the ultimate key to success for unlocking talent like Bruce. Talent that we very, if ever, really start to see. And again, I'm excited to see this roster in motion for a move that has been heavily awaited in over a year.